Today, we are going to talk about building an email newsletter. So whether you're considering it for the first time and you want to actually grow it, get to a certain velocity, make some money off it, or you have an existing newsletter and it's not where you want to be, you want to take it to the next level, we're going to break it down. So why are we talking about this? I looked around recently and realized most of my good friends have an email newsletter that's like a critical part of their life and their business. Having to write and put something out there, even to a small amount of subscribers, forces you to establish a cohesive narrative of thought, which brain rot internet has taken away from us. It also gives people who make content or who are doing things in the world an easy call to action to offer people, where you don't have to buy something or dive in, but you can subscribe to the newsletter, which lets you retain people off of the network. Now, obviously there's monetization. We'll get to my newsletter business in a minute, but I know a lot of people that make good money casually off of their newsletter. But most importantly, it is interest on demand for the rest of your life. Even if there's 100 people all the way up to 100,000, whatever idea or offer or thing that you want to put out there for the rest of your life, you have an email list that will activate to validate. So in this video, we're going to cover my experience building a six-figure newsletter business with Hyper and how we got there. And I'm talking about several of my friends' businesses. For instance, I do Hyper with another creator, Clayton, who has his own newsletter called Spreza that also generates good income for him. It's really interesting. I'm going to walk through some of my favorite examples in the space of different types of newsletters. We're going to go through the various email platforms in which you should choose and why. We're going to talk about making a standout newsletter, because a good newsletter isn't just about you, but there's several direct paths you can take to actually make people care about what you're doing. We're going to go through a section on growing your newsletter and actual tactics to get subscribers. And then last, we're going to hit how you actually make some money off this. But overall, I pretty firmly believe that anyone who puts some intention in for about 24 months can get a newsletter that makes them, if not six figures, pretty close to it. Now, I don't put a lot of dollar figures in any of my videos or say, hey, this is how you make money online or anything, but newsletters is actually one of the best, most monetizable things that people can have. And I'm always consistently surprised by how many people I know that make money doing it. If you've ever wanted to send your ideas to thousands and thousands of people and see how they respond, let's lock in. So first, let's talk about my experience building email newsletters. I actually got my start as a marketer diving really deep into email. This was on the brand side. We're focused mainly on newsletters here. But I worked for a director of marketing, I think actually VP of marketing at the time, who was encouraging me to build my skill set. I had been a designer, I was getting into marketing, and he was like, hey, if you want to have longevity in your career, you need to learn more things. So he encouraged me to do training with the email system we had at that company, which was Eloqua at the time, if you remember that. And when I moved into different industries, I kind of took that expertise with me. So in one of my next businesses, I had an agency, a product development agency, all contract engineering, with a friend of mine who I'd worked for prior, who had a pretty big personality and a known presence on the internet. He was like a minor celebrity, for lack of a better term. And I helped build his email newsletter. The brand we worked at together, I had the emails coming from his name. We started out as separate news from him. We then used his name and likeness and his LinkedIn, a number of other things to build that newsletter to be a lead funnel for our agency. It was one of the most critical generators of business for us. We had this all in ConvertKit at the time. I'll talk about software in a minute, but we built up about 25,000 person email list off of very niche downloads. Our agency was extremely focused on robotics and aerospace, basically anything with an autopilot or a sensor. Like, this is pretty niche stuff. And we built up one of the biggest lists like in that category that then drove work for the agency. And that formed the impetus for me to say, why am I not doing this myself? So I started a newsletter before I became a video creator. I was building it mostly on X. I grew to several thousand people, didn't make any money off of it, started to use it to work with my creator items as I became a video creator. And then it became an extension of my creator business. And I partnered with Clayton, who I run the newsletter on now, and said, hey, it shouldn't be my newsletter. It should be a bigger thing than that. We worked really hard to grow it. It's 35,000 subs now. And it's a six-figure newsletter business where we sell mostly advertisements and then also other packages and things that go with that. And we built that all on Beehive. I'm familiar with all of these various platforms. And this is a good segue into what platform should you choose to build your email newsletter. So as many of you know, I run my brand email off of Omnisend now. I ran it off Klaviyo for many years. Klaviyo raised their prices recently, which is a good impetus to switch over to Omnisend because the pricing got kind of crazy. But that's good for brand email. You're choosing basically between Klaviyo and Omnisend and a few others for brand email. We're talking about email blasts and newsletters here. So that, it really comes down to Beehive, Substack, ConvertKit. Anything else you're choosing for this, I would not recommend. You are choosing between those three. And really you're choosing between Beehive and Substack. I built my first newsletter on ConvertKit. I built that former Guru's newsletter on ConvertKit. I've used it a lot. They are behind now in terms of the opportunity they allow for writers and creators. And so I'm going to push that back and just focus on Beehive and Substack because those are your kind of two core choices and why and how to do it. So there's a huge moment happening right now on Substack because Substack is an email platform that is also basically a social network. Your posts show up into a feed. You can post on a feed. There is a built-in recommendation system, and people who are on Substack, who are any level of social, have other relationships with Substack people, and who post frequently on there, or post elsewhere, want to make content around their Substack category, can grow very organically on there. You will get an organic boost, which basically means more email subscribers by going into the Substack ecosystem. This is something we talk about extensively at our Hyper newsletter, because we say, hey, we're 35,000 now. If we'd been on Substack the last year, we'd probably be 50. And there's some reasons why and why not to choose that network I'll get into. But if you are focused primarily on growth from your email, then Substack is the choice to work on. But with a caveat, you need to be social. You need to be able to work with other creators to say, hey, I'll feature your email newsletter and you feature mine. You need to be posting on the Substack algorithm, have relationships, push subscribers over there. It may be hard to do all that from zero. You may not know anyone who's a whole new for you, in which case this may not be the thing. The other core thing about this is if you are selling subscriptions, they take a pretty hefty percent. It's like 10% of all subscription revenue on there. It adds up. It's an expensive proposition if you are really selling through that, to do all that through there. And so there's some considerations to have before you get into it. But again, if your main focus is I want to get as many subs as possible, you're going to have any level of relationships with other people that do, Substack is the place to go. Then next up we have Beehive, which we currently run our newsletter on. So Beehive is an excellent place to monetize your newsletter. It has all the same growth tools. They have a website builder within there that's really solid. All the same kind of email tools. They have a great system for referral, which we'll talk about inside the growth program of this, where you can have your subscribers bring more people to you. They also have recommendations, but doesn't have the same power of Substacks. But they give you business. Every time I log into Beehive, there is a list of people that want to fill slots inside our newsletter. And it's lower price than if we sold those ads ourselves. But basically, any newsletter we want to send, we can get somewhere between $150 and $500 from a Beehive-placed newsletter segment. We had a Nike feature for Nike Air Max inside of our Beehive newsletter the other week. They basically work with companies to fill inventory at certain prices, and they'll base it on click or on opens. And you have an endless option to insert ads into your newsletter, which means if you are not someone who wants to do sales or feels like you have a flow to be able to get newsletter in there, they will get you money inside this, especially if you have topics that brands like to talk about. And so it's a real huge consideration, and one of the reasons I recommend the network most is I know a lot of people, especially writers, are not salespeople, and Beehive will do some of that job for you. And you start to get to a decent sized newsletter, that money is going to kind of be built in for whenever you need it. So when it really comes down to your core choice, Beehive gives you a little more individuality, a little better of a website experience, and gives you better monetization opportunities for basically ad placement. And Substack gives you more of a network to grow and get you more subscribers. Don't overthink it. Start with either one, whichever name you like better, whatever. The core of starting an email newsletter is just to start it.
If you're starting a brand, run a business, or have multiple businesses, I found an excellent business banking platform setup you should check out called Relay. Whenever anyone asks what I wish I'd done differently in my earliest businesses, it would be having a relentless focus on cash flow visibility. And now that I have all these projects going on, it's about ease of management and visibility for multiple things in one place. If you're starting a new business, Relay has no minimum balances and no hidden charges or fees. It's an excellent starter option from a business banking platform that understands the entrepreneurship experience and is built around it. And when you get more advanced, you can actually manage multiple entities from one login. So you don't have to keep jumping around accounts just to keep track of everything. If you're paying contractors, Relay lets you request their payment info securely. Plus, you can ask for a W-9 up front so you have less headache at tax time. Another thing I love is you can create multiple checking and savings accounts inside Relay to better organize your cash flow. You can even set up automatic transfer rules so money moves the way you want it to without having to manually do it every time. So if you're growing a business and want a banking setup that actually feels like it's designed for you, Relay is a really strong option. Check out the link in my description to learn more, and thank you so much to Relay for sponsoring this video.
So now we're going to talk what makes a standout newsletter. I'm going to run through some examples because I have so many friends who have newsletters I absolutely love. And then we'll get into how do you actually drive demand for those. But the thing that matters most is not driving demand, is the concept. The concept is what matters in a newsletter. There are so many newsletters out there. If you want to start one today, you are in an endlessly competitive world. And one thing I want to call is don't just make it about you. When I started my newsletter, it was called Product People. It was really based on factories. I wanted to send people factory links and help them find and build products. And so that was saying, hey, there's a niche there. Someone hasn't doing it, I'm going to do it. But eventually turned into Oren's newsletter, talking about the content I made, etc. But also that inherently is cool. People want to hear about that, but doesn't have that same like virality or growth that comes from some of the tactics I'm about to talk through. And this is why we transitioned it to Hyper. And the brand now is, it is a brand strategy newsletter. We are the #1 place you can go for brand strategy. If you care about that as an entrepreneur, a marketer, a designer, you will get ideas and functions from that. And that's where we've zoned in. But there's 3 core categories to establish a standout newsletter. One is finding a new zone, a new angle, something other people haven't done, a unique lens. We'll talk about that in a second. The second is a topical deep dive, similar to what I talked about with factories, but with things that work. And then we have media replacement, things that people used to read traditional media for, but since traditional media isn't consumed anymore, people who are replacing that via email. So let's talk these through one by one. So when I talk about a new zone, what do I mean? A new idea. So there's 2 newsletters that come to mind for me. The first is my friend Andrea, who has a newsletter called Snack Shot. The other is my friend Casey Lewis, who has a newsletter called After School. Let's focus on Snack Shot first. Andrea's newsletter, which is amazing. I remember when it came out because there was nothing else like it. That was what was inspiring. She took this idea of snacks. Her entire newsletter is about snacks. She would put out these intricately thought out, filled with amazing graphics that she designed herself, deep dives into, the sexualization of food, or like and how that's going into packaging, or its overlap with religion, or this new deep dive in all these different packages that came out. She had a series thing called Oracular Spectacular, based like off the MGMT name, where she would break down all these different categories and items. But she said, I'm going to take a niche that is not written about considerably, or only written about by these legacy publications, and I'm going to put a twist on it. I'm going to go really cultural. I'm going to identify all the new emerging things. I'm going to find trends from that. Deepest person in this niche that exists. And she was, and she thought about it critically, and there's nothing else like it. And so if you want to be in the mix, you are even tangentially related to the food industry, she became like a must read. And the next I want to talk about Casey Lewis. She has a newsletter called After School. It's my favorite newsletter that I read, because it has a complete unique lens I would never get anywhere else. She writes about Gen Z culture. But basically be like, what is Gen Z thinking and talking and walking about? And she made a newsletter that only talks about that. So for instance, when Thanksgiving or Christmas, she'll be like, I watched 500 Gen Z TikTok haul videos, so you don't have to. And then broke down what Gen Z is buying. She's doing work that research firms wouldn't do, right? That isn't necessarily happening anywhere else, but is absolutely fascinating if you work selling anything. And so those are examples of unique ideas. If you want to make a standout newsletter, what lens can you look at? You're finding a unique presented lens with which no one else talks. That is number one, the best item, the hardest item, because you need an original idea, an original focus. Most people aren't going to be able to do that, and that's okay. But that is like the way to stand out. And the second category, which is most likely for a lot of people, is what's called a topical deep dive. And a lot of people do newsletters like this, newsletters about a subject. I'm going to tell you how to make them good. So this is, you take one topic, marketing, computers, electronics, whatever it is, and you just talk about in their newsletter. And a good example of this is Rachel Carton. She has a newsletter called Link in Bio for social media managers. Her entire purpose of this is news for social media managers. Now there's many websites that focus on social media, right? Hers is good because she has made an effort to be a tactical, responsive platform about this subject. And this would be the same thing for you. Whatever niche you're in, you're competing against a ton of newsletters out there. Looking at Rachel as a model is a great one, where in her newsletters, she basically has a list of things to try every week. So basically every week, a social media manager can open that newsletter and be like, here's the things I have ideas this week. It's saving me some time in my job. Critical component. What can you do inside your newsletter that if someone opens it up in your target demo, they can use it immediately? And she also does timely interviews, not just an interview series around her niche, which there's plenty of, but hey, a new campaign will come out that everyone's talking about. She'll have the social media manager on. She is quick to be like, I'm going to find what's happening and then give people info on what's happening so it's relevant. And I want to talk about my friend Jacob. He ran through Cut 30 a while back, and he makes content just about Salem, Oregon. So Jacob turned his local Instagram account, which began to do very well, into a local newsletter. And that's exactly what Jacob has, right? Where he's saying, hey, cool, I'm going to present all the things that, if I'm in a region where it doesn't have the right local news doesn't cover what people actually want, we're going to talk about everything from restaurant openings to important political things to what's actually happening to spotlighting local people. And there is a niche for that, right? And you cover that niche with care and intention, and you stand out. So we had this like new zone category. We had these topical deep dive categories. And the third category is what we call media replacement. So right now you go to try to read an article on anything you may have read 3 years ago. You go even at your Apple News or Business Insider or whatever, you notice a trend, right? Everything is paywalled. There's ads and stuff all over it to make it hard to actually read and consume. And the articles suck. Like people writing it are worse than ever. And it's like not the info you wanted. They're not thorough. Like traditional media is at the worst state it's ever been. It's only going to get worse. And if you work in that industry, you need to get out. Now, what is happening is media replacement is happening by single writers, right? It doesn't take a writer's room to execute a lot of what's happening. And how does that work? So 2 examples. A woman I know, Emily Sundberg, has a newsletter called Feed Me. And for me, that's actually replaced a significant amount of things I used to read. If I was browsing Apple News and looking at The Economist or looking at like articles from the New York Times or whatever that is, she is basically taking my interest level of those similar things. And she's just been like, I am making my version of it. and it's good, it's well written, it's funny, and it was replacing traditional media, and is worth her Substack's like $4 or $5, completely worth it every month for me. Same thing with my friend Nate. So Nate has a newsletter called Express Checkout, where he does the same thing. He aggregates CPG, so consumer packaged goods, and all he does is he just writes the news the way similar you'd expect like an Ad Age or someone would have done prior. If you are in this industry, he's doing like basically must-read info for you, and guess what? That saves me a ton of time. I'm invested in a bunch of CPG brands. I work with a bunch of CPG brands. If I want to learn what's going on, I look at his newsletter. I don't need to do anything else. And he knows he has a captive audience, even with a couple thousand people, that anyone who wants to advertise in that niche can get to. So those are your real 3 categories. Now choose one of those. Are you replacing a traditional media scenario? Are you doing a topical deep dive, making it good? Or are you entering into a new zone or a new lens? And then we're going to talk about publishing cadence. Like once you've decided this, how often do I have to write a newsletter? And my main thing is I encourage people to just stay on a cadence. A lot of these newsletters are, like Emily's is daily or close to daily. I publish mine weekly. Some people publish monthly. I think it doesn't matter, just stick to it. And I would highly recommend weekly or monthly to start, and you just need to do it. It needs to happen like it's more about not missing it ever. You're assigning your cadence and how much your cadence is. So now, how do I actually grow demand for my newsletter, and then how do I monetize my newsletter? Let's dive in. So one of the most effective ways to grow a newsletter is X, formerly Twitter. Terrible social network, filled with some of the worst people, but you will find there is active, engaged word cells, for lack of a better term, that are on there that are engaging in those things. If you post tweets and you reply to people and you grow on there, attaching a call to action to all of your tweets that perform to sign up for your newsletter works. I know this because I've done it. And I find a lot of people I meet who are trying to grow their newsletters. And I'm like, hey, are you on Twitter or are you on X? And they're like, yeah, you're doing pretty good, yeah. Do you attach a call to action to every time you have a banger tweet? And they're like, no. Well, guess what? All of my friends who have banger newsletters talked about these. This was Landforce, this was James Camp, this is a bunch of these folks you may know if you're on X. We hit the plug on almost like at least our top 20% of tweets, because you're already spending time on this network anyway. Begin to grow and add your following, and most people just don't want to ask, and you have to ask. If you're going to start a newsletter and you want to grow, just do it and be proud of it and push it out there and let people to sign up. And so X, that's one of those. Find 10 people in your niche, reply to all their tweets with something smart and insightful, while also posting high value content yourself, like on a daily cadence, something people could save or share about with words in there around topics that people engage with, and like you're headed in the right direction. The second thing around growth is it's basically taking advantage of your existing list. So Beehive has a great referral setup where you can basically set metrics with which someone will receive a reward for referring people to you. Leveraging your existing audience to push your newsletter for you. And this is really important because like you can do that from an incentive standpoint, which is always great. It's just something to have and you can think about existing. But really what you want to do is from a content standpoint, is your newsletter shareable enough that people are sending it to other people, which will then increase your subscriptions organically, right? When I look at Casey's newsletter, I forwarded her newsletter to, I don't know, 75 people probably. And I'm sure a good chunk of those signed up. I am one of thousands of people probably forwarding her newsletter to lots of people because it is that good and that relevant, has that much info related to a job that is nowhere else. If you create good enough shareable content, I'd have that lens, is what I'm writing about good enough? And if you can't do that weekly, now you have a monthly newsletter, because you better be able to do something that's that useful monthly. And say, I'm focused on getting the people that read this to push it out. You have to have that lens when you're attacking this. Then we get to Instagram and TikTok with a call to action, right? My newsletter would be nowhere near where it is today if I wasn't banging out videos on LinkedIn and saying, or banging out videos on Instagram and TikTok and being like, get more of the full download or get all the links in my newsletter this week. And if you are a creator of any size, I'd be doing that at least once a week, shouting out your newsletter in a call to action and linked in your bio. We have so many people who are casual creators now. I'm sure a lot of people watching this video are. It is the best easy call to action. If you don't have it, you are losing the plot. Now you just have to find ways to shout it out. One of the easiest ones is if you're talking about 6 things, just say, I'm gonna link these in my newsletter. People are lazy. They're not gonna hunt this stuff down, but they will sign up for a newsletter to get sent directly to them. Think in terms of lead magnets. The idea of you give someone an email, they get something from you in return. Can you give them a one-page playbook or a template or your compilation? Like, I have a lead magnet that's a packaging directory. You may have seen this. It's all my favorite packaging in like a little Notion database with links and a picture. It took me a few hours to put together. I get emails all the time because whenever I make a packaging video, and you can see my whole packaging directory if you sign up for the email list. And it's like I recurringly use it. So it took one time, a lot of time, and now I'm gonna use it for literally years to get email subscribers. But if you are posting content on these other networks, you need to ask for it, you need to have it in your bio, and kind of tie those dots together. But that is the number one growth, right? That's drove probably 25,000 of the subs that we have currently are like literally just from that. And that is for anyone who's creating that video content, that is worth doing. And then we have just Substack in general. If you are on Substack and you are getting recommended by other people, or you are recommending, or you are posting on there, there's a lot of organic traffic that comes from it. Clayton, my partner in Hyper, has a menswear newsletter called Sprezza. He is recommended by a lot of other Substacks in that same niche. He recommends other people. He grows considerably. Every day he wakes up and has new subscribers from the fact that he's just on Substack and in that ecosystem. And this ties into this idea that social media is social and email is the same way. work with other email creators, cross-collaborate, push each other's newsletter. Like that is a thing that works inside this industry. And the last piece of this we'll talk about is paid recommendations. Beehive has a whole built-in thing for this where they'll actually promote your newsletter to other newsletters and you pay per subscriber, which a lot of people use. And then people run Facebook and Meta ads. That same lead magnet we just talked about where, hey, if I could run a packaging directory ad that says, hey, join my email list to get access to this directory, I could probably get emails at like less than a few dollars each. And you begin to look at the economics of this, we're getting the money next, and say, hey, it's actually worth it for me to do that because I make X amount over time. You can begin to grow your list monetarily. And there is so many of these big newsletters you see that have grown this way. And it's somewhat frowned upon in terms of like, oh, well, is this an organic? They really like me, or they really not? And that's something you have to test your way into finding out. But if you're like, hey, I'm doing all these other things, I'm growing, but not as fast as I want, then the two things you can do is say, hey, make the best content ever that is gonna go basically shareable viral, which is option one, or start working on paid stuff. We haven't done any paid in the newsletter we have existing, but if I was ever like, hey, I need to get this to 100K, that's the first lever I'd pull. So lastly, let's talk about making money on your newsletter. So the first option is just paid subscribers. So Clayton, who runs Sprezza, he has paid subscribers, hundreds if not more will pay every month for access to his newsletter. Usually how that happens is you'll do some amount for free and then some amount paid. So there's like a free newsletter every month and then some other ones that are paid. I would not recommend that from the start. I would build up a following and then add paid onto it in a layer that's like, hey, now there's 2 newsletters a month for paid subscribers and kind of filter that in. And you can do very well on it. So when I was in New York, I was interviewing a woman on Angelic who has a newsletter called the Sociology of Business. She has a $50 a month Substack, which I would not be surprised if it has like thousands and thousands of subscribers. And that is a good business, as you can imagine, just from doing back of the napkin math, because she's providing genuine real value as someone like noted with a super impactful like deep dive articles. So you can work your way up from a couple dollars to someone like Feed Me who has way more subscribers but is doing like $4 or $5 a month to a more niche but doing like 50, you have this variance in between. So paid subs is number one. Again, once you have a newsletter, if you're driving that amount of value, people like it, that's an easy way to turn on and get a baseline there. The second thing is your actual offers. So my friend James, who has a newsletter called Nano Flips, he talks about buying and selling businesses. That's his entire thing. Buying online businesses, growing them, selling them. He provides examples. He shows listings of businesses you could buy and what he would do with them. And he has like tactics within his newsletter, but he has a program he sells like that is about that same thing that is promoted in the newsletter. Which probably would make way more money than anyone running an ad in a newsletter or anyone running a paid sub. And he also has the same thing where if he has other offers, he's done like, oh, I want to get X hours of consulting, you can hit me here. Or he pushes himself and his offers through his newsletter, which is going to be way better money than paid subs, but you need to actually have things that are worth selling and using for this, right? This is an example like on our Hyper newsletter, we don't like push a bunch of things, but we put out reports every so often. Like we have a report on how to make great merchandise for your brand. It's like $200. We don't push it really hard. It's at the bottom of the footer every time and people buy regularly, right? And so you can have some of those low offers that are in there that help you take advantage of that list without having to go add paid subs. And then last you have ads. So Hyper runs a lot of ads. We have ads in basically every newsletter. Some newsletters can charge more than others, but if you're getting into if you're over 10,000, you should be able to get a couple $100 per. If you're in your niche, maybe able to get more, and you start to get up to the 30, 50,000, you should be getting at least a couple $1,000 per. And so now they actually have to go and people are not going to go hunt down your newsletter for those type of ads. You will get Beehive style ads if you're using them, which are in there for $300, $200, $100, like cheaper ads. But if you want to go find perfect people for your vertical, maybe they'll hunt you down, but you have to go outbound, right? And so every month, Clayton goes and hits up new people for us to work on inside this newsletter. And he sends out X amount of DMs and it has a media kit in it. This is what you need. Hey, Hyper has 30,000 whatever subs. We have a 52% open rate. We have a blank % click rate. We've worked with these brands and they saw these types of click through and follow through. And you can get one email blast for this amount. You can get a package for this amount. And we have some other offers that you can do like related to it. And this is the type of people we reach. They're this, and we survey our audience regularly so we kind of know, hey, they're in this jobs positions, they're in these industries. This is where the value is. And we try to find people that has the most value for us. It's not about going and blanketing this advertiser, that advertiser. It's about like who would actually gain value from this, right? You see I do a lot of content with Air. Air sponsored our newsletter before. Air has done like reports with us because people that are creatives or work in brand strategy who want to have an asset management system for that same thing, who would say, hey, like I need a better way to serve and deliver files and work through that. Like that is a complete alignment between my demographic and who Air is trying to sell to. And that's not every company. There's not 100 companies that are like that. Maybe there's 50, but that is now your demo. Go reach out to them, have that conversation, and then go back to it, right? Like keeping that list of those. One of the easiest things to do is if there's similar topics, go look at every newsletter they've ever done, go back to their archives and find who all their advertisers are is one easy way to start. But also be critically thinking about who you have value for. Find those people on LinkedIn and on X, sending them DMs. Again, the more of a social media presence you have, the easier this becomes. Why I recommend everyone become a creator, even at a small level. That's a separate video. And you basically have to go into that sales funnel. Now, people get overwhelmed by sales, but I would make it dead easy. Once a week, you got a 2-hour block. In that 2-hour block, you are selling. You go through, you update your media kit, you find some contacts, you send some DMs, you follow up on previous, done at the end of your 2 hours, you've now sold your stuff for your newsletter. That'll probably be more time than you need in most cases. But your job is to basically put that together to actually put ads inside the newsletter. In between those 3 things, you have plenty of ability to monetize. There's a newsletter I signed up for when I'm 19, Bob Lefsetz, like a music newsletter. He's still writing it. That guy's like 68. He sends newsletters every day. His newsletter is a key business driver for him and will be for the rest of his life. And I would be looking at that for you. If you are a writer or want to do this, your time horizon is forever. Your time horizon is until I want to stop making money off of this thing I'm passionate about or having community around this thing I'm passionate about. Both are equally important. And so I would be building this for the long term, because guess what? You may get 100 subs your first year, 200 subs your first year. But if you get to 20,000 by the time you're 65, that's a life changer. It allows you to do all types of things you couldn't do before. And I look at this like, hey, our hyperlist will be hundreds of thousands of people by the time I retire. It will be a force inside how brands do strategy. And since I'm looking at it on that time horizon, you look at decisions really differently. And you make different money or do different things in between. But it is one of the things, like social media has always shifted. You move away, or I can't access these fans. Email stays for a long time. So I wouldn't say that you'd ever want this to be your entire business, but it's an excellent complement as a side project if you're working full-time, if you are a creator, or if you're just really passionate about any subject. So I appreciate y'all watching. I'm sure you have any questions on this. Maybe we'll do like a level 2 deep dive. Please drop any of those questions on there of what I didn't cover, and I'll link them up for a future video. But hopefully we gave you plenty of a blueprint to get started and act on a newsletter that will actually work. Thanks for watching.